Hi, everyone. I'm Sherrie Sokolowski, founder of SLS Event Planning and Consulting. I have been managing and planning events for over 15 years, 8 of those years as the owner and operator of SLS Event Planning and Consulting. During that time, I have helped over 50 clients manage hundreds of events. Some of you may know me from my former days as Bill Glazer's executive assistant and event planner of GKIC, Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle. And I'll go into more of that detail later on when we talk a bit more about SLS and what SLS can do for you in your event planning needs. Today, my goal is to provide a bit more insight as to what is happening with the live event industry and the pandemic of the coronavirus. Joining me today will be John Whitney of the Emergency Concierge International Company, and he and I are going to kind of dive into what we hope would be some information for you in emergency preparedness for your events now or in the future when hosting live events, things that we may not have thought of before that could be helpful to us when something like this comes across our plate. After John kind of goes into more detail about what he'll be sharing, I'll dive deep into a PowerPoint presentation that will take a couple of our contract clauses that you may have in your own hotel contract and may not quite understand what those words mean. For example, the last week or two since this pandemic has come across our plates, I've had a lot of my clients reach out to me and say, what do these clauses mean? And what does it mean for me for my live event? Is it going to protect me? How are we going to move forward from here? And what does it look like as far as the cost to them? So I'll kind of go through that with you today. Want to let you know that neither John or I are claiming to be an expert as an attorney, a health provider, a doctor or nurse, or anything along those lines. What we are saying to you is our opinion and what we understand within our own industry. As me, an event planner who negotiates hotel contracts now for the past 15 years, and working with venues and hoteliers in regards to what clauses mean and what they are willing to do for us during this time, that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. And then John is going to be sharing with you his expertise on what emergency preparedness looks like and what that means during this time of the coronavirus pandemic. So again, our goal here today is to bring John on, John Whitney of the Emergency Concierge International, where he is going to share his expertise of what's happening in the event industry in regards to emergency preparedness. And we just want to share with you some things today, just so that you have a better understanding of what your options are for your upcoming live event, if you can still have it, or your future live event that you're going to be planning down the road. And today, so I'm going to be bringing John on, and just again, so that you all know, we are an expert within our own field in the event industry. For me, an event planner and how the contracts work logistically, event planning, and John in the emergency preparedness. We are not claiming to be an attorney to give you legal advice, and we're not claiming to be a doctor or someone in the insurance industry to be able to give you legal advice under those realms. We're just trying to help you understand what we know and then allow you an opportunity to make the best decision for you, your business, and your live events. So John, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can introduce yourself and tell us all about what Emergency Preparedness International is all about.
All right. Thank you, Sherrie, for having us. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and being able to discuss with your, people watching this, different options that exist from a emergency preparedness standpoint. So I'm the CEO of Emergency Concierge International. We are an all hazards emergency consultant. We're specializing in planning, preparedness, response, and recovery as it relates to crisis management, specializing in the meetings and events industry. Myself and all of my personnel have extensive backgrounds in emergency response, frontline real-world practical expertise. I have a master's in emergency management from Arizona State, a master's in Homeland Security from the Naval Postgraduate School. My beautiful wife, is in the meetings and events industry, and we found kind of this area of the concierge component of emergency planning. So what we do is we build custom packages dedicated to meeting and event professionals. And that scales from providing templates for you to build your own emergency operations plans, to building emergency plans, as well as providing on-site resources to help work with your event planning team to offer safety, security, medical, and any sort of crisis management options that you may need during your event. We really recognize the need that the event planner ends up handling a lot of that load, and we try to provide that subject matter expertise resource that's built in there, but that's also familiar with the event space, recognizing that sometimes the show must go on, and we need to be able to support that and mitigate it. We are all hazards. There's always a lot of confusion of, well, I have security. Well, security is one niche, one area of all hazards approach. Our personnel cover everything from the terrorist attack, hurricane preparedness, etc., to the sprained ankle, my stomach doesn't feel good, and everything in between. So we really just pride ourselves on that, and then pride ourselves on being a 100% customer service based organization.
Great. That just brings up a question that I didn't think of asking before until now. You've given us such a great background on what your expertise are. And that is, going back to some of the client events that I do in the past, the needs for security have come into play. Like if they have a large event where they have a ton of exhibitors and sponsors and things like that, where we've had to hire a couple of different type of contractors, security, off-duty police officers to come in and provide security of certain areas, and someone who is an off-duty fire marshal that can come and do walkthroughs to make sure sponsors are within the guidelines of where they need to be. And then if we've got, because of such a large crowd, sometimes you have a medical emergency of someone not feeling well, an allergic reaction, things like that. So are you saying to us that if we were to hire you, your team would cover all of that?
What we can do is a lot of times there's local resources that are required based on the venue space that have to be involved. What we can also do in those types of events is coordinate those resources to make sure everyone's all on the same page. We'll look at being able to fill in gaps, where my team can do that. And then if we have to add and supplement, we've done it both ways. We've done where we cover the end-to-end complete package. And we've also done where there's other components of whether that's armed security, because obviously that gets into a very local specific regulations. Venue security, as well as, on-site staff based on contractual obligations. But we can help represent the client, be that public safety liaison, that resource liaison. We've even done citywide events where we've sat as the client representative in city emergency operations centers with local police, local fire to represent the client's interests. So it's really, we are fully customizable that we can adapt to, any and all scenarios and just take that load completely off your plate.
That's perfect. So for anyone listening here who has a small team and they don't have someone who can do all that legwork of doing the research, of reaching out to the local providers for X, Y, and Z, then you can reach out to John and say, John, these are our needs for the event. Can you help us coordinate all of that? And then you're kind of a one-stop shop. Like you said, it may not be something your team may specifically provide, but you can coordinate it and oversee it for that person, because you, as the expert in the industry, would know the questions to ask and what to look out for and things like that, where someone who is a part of a staff for an event may not know to ask those questions.
Absolutely. And one thing that we've really found is kind of a feather in our cap is that we found that when we've been involved in events, we've seen a much better response from the different entities that are involved. Mm-hmm. As far as, let's say hotel security, for example. Well, the fact that they know that we're there, we've noticed a real ramp up in the game there and attention to detail. So it makes for a much better product. So, and we are very collaborative relationship management. I mean, that's a huge thing to us, as well as client reputation management and the business continuity of recognizing that it's a business that it's in. We want to make sure everybody has a good, fun, and safe time.
Right. And that kind of goes along with what I'll touch on a little bit later in the webinar about relationships, right? So the benefit of having someone like yourself and someone like myself, an event planner, the relationships that we have already built with the local resources in the area, and the respect that people get when they know, oh, this person knows what they're asking about and what they're looking for, instead of someone who may not know, and they will fail to tell them the information that they need to know, because that's where hidden costs could come into play, or a regulation maybe that you guys didn't know you had to meet, and then all of a sudden, they could come in and try and shut you down. I mean, I had that happen to me. Well, I didn't get it shut down, but I had that experience where this was probably in the very beginning of my event planning career, where we were having an event in a city where, not too far away from where we were, it was union regulated, but where we were, it was not. And our AV provider, because we hired a professional, knew to ask the right questions and had everything put into place. Because when I had the local union come in and pull me out of the event and say, look, I'm going to shut you down. You don't have any of my union workers here. And I'm like, oh no, you cannot shut me down. We have taken care of everything. And I put someone like yourself in front of him and said, you talk with quote unquote John, he's got it taken care of. And then we were fine. We could continue operating on as normal. So that's good for everybody to know, because you know what to ask, the regulations. And if you don't, you're going to research it for them.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So just so everyone knows here, another reason why we decided to do this webinar together is because of what's happening right now in the live event industry. It's not just in the live event industry, it's affecting everyone, teachers, students, dentists. I'm hearing people aren't coming to the dentist anymore. It's the declaration that the World Health Organization declared of the pandemic of the COVID-19 virus, and how we can't be in gatherings. One of my clients right now, who is supposed to have an event in a month and a half, we were trying to wait, and we weren't 100% sure we were going to cancel or postpone, and we wanted to see what played out. And we just saw the emergency response that just came up, and judges putting out in that area that you cannot have a local gathering of 250 or more. Well, that falls under his event category, and he was forced to make that decision to cancel his event for this time being. So for those who are listening to this right now, John, what would you say their concern may be? Like, I have another client having an event right now, right this weekend, in that same city, but the event is smaller. What would you say to someone where they're worried about the safety of their attendees at an event? What could they put into place that would allow them to not be worried about the liability or the safety of their staff or their speakers, sponsors, or attendees?
Yeah, no, completely. One of the things that's really difficult when people, talk about liability specific, is that a lot of, and again, not speaking as a lawyer on liability, but a lot of it is, we do talk about duty of care, gross negligence, et cetera, of, did you put the things into place that you would reasonably be expected to put into place to try to mitigate potential risk? In the emergency world, you can't control, we've talked to clients that, well, can you ensure that no one in our event gets coronavirus? It's absolutely not. I can't, that's impossible. No one would give you that guarantee. And if they did, they're lying to you. What we talk about is, did you do everything reasonably in your power to control to try to minimize that risk? So we could talk about it now or later, but we created kind of a simple, a step-by-step guide of if you're having a live event specific to the coronavirus COVID-19 medical plan, of what people could put into place, kind of the step-by-step from the attendee communication to the communication with the venue, if someone were to present, et cetera. As this issue evolves, and different regulations, different things occur, it really focuses still on the general hygiene maintenance, and the, kind of, whether that's having a medical standby or kind of having conversations with the venue. One of the biggest things we've identified, upping cleaning schedules, et cetera, things like that. One of the biggest things we've discussed is, if you have an attendee that does present at your event with flu-like symptoms, how are you going to handle that? And who is going to handle that? And then, like I talked, working tight with the meetings and events industries, is then how do you manage the attendee perception of that event? the continuity of that event, etc. Um,
Right.
Unfortunately, as this moves into a community spread type issue, you're going to see an uptake in the amount of people, that are testing positive for it, etc.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it's and everybody's, well, comparing to the flu, this and that. I mean, statistically, the flu just destroys coronavirus. I mean, you just can't compare. We're just very comfortable and used to the flu. So I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm kind of forecasting it. You're going to end up knowing people who have tested positive for it and may not have been, most of the people testing positive, it's very minimum. They're asymptomatic, but they're, carrying the virus. It's going to kind of
Right.
get to the calming point of, yes, people get it. Yes, people survive it. And just like you've been in an event where someone's gotten the flu, you've given someone the flu at an event, you've gotten the flu from someone at an event. And not to
Right.
downplay it, not to take away from, the anything that causes death is dangerous, but it's really being realistic about when you talk about the mortality rates, the spreads, et cetera. So I think you're going to get to a point, again, this is just speculation, but I think you're going to get to a point where it's just going to kind of be there and something that occurs. Um, right. But the key is now doing everything in your power, everything, responsibly to put into
Hmm.
place. That simplistic
Right.
focus is communication, planning and preparedness, and then, the general hygiene ramp up.
Exactly. And, I was talking with, with my clients who are having events over the next couple of months and waiting out on making our decision on if we're forced to cancel or can we wait it out before we make that decision. And I said, we could put plans into motion with the hotels now of saying, we're going to expect you to ramp up your cleaning and make it visible to the attendees. Make it visible that you're walking around. It's even the simplest of things. They're walking around with their own gloves on, picking up all the trash of all the cups and stuff so that people don't have to touch other surfaces with their own hands to pick it up because it's driving them nuts. Or, cleaning the door handles, all of those different things that what a lot of my clients are saying should be done
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Why isn't it being done anyway?
Yeah.
Like the joke going on right now of
Yeah.
why are we out
Did
of toilet
did you
paper and
not
hand
wash your
sanitizer?
hands before coronavirus? Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. But it's kind of like what you and I talked about before we started recording today. It's what the new standard is going to be for live events. So,
Yeah.
so make that note. If take a moment right now as you guys are making notes on this webinar to say, okay, what am I going to do? Even if it's the most minimal thing for my events. You may be saying to yourself, I don't have events that are a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people. I only have, say, 10, 20, 50 people in the room. Maybe I don't have to worry about this. I'm not going to be in a hotel. I'm in my own office or my own business. These are still things that you need to put into place for yourself. Make it known that you are cleaning those things and have things out there for people, right? Hand sanitizers. My daughter, before this even came into play, when we go to church and we drop her off at her children's church program, they line the kids up and they're putting hand sanitizers on them before they even get into the room because it's just natural hygiene. Kids are gross, they touch everything, they touch their nose, they pick their nose and touch everything else. So we want to try and prevent the spread of that stuff. And I think it's just a matter of putting that into play. It's just something that's automatic. And unfortunately, it should have been done before, but it really wasn't looked at as a necessity to where it is now. So, John, you talked a little bit about this, where working with the local, the venue, the hotel. What can you say to people of things that they may come up against where a venue may push back on them on, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put forth the effort of having extra cleaning. Do you have any advice on a scenario that maybe you have gone through yourself on behalf of a client where you may provide some help to those listening?
Yeah. So what we've really found is most of the venues right now are being very accommodating. You and I chatted about relationships and building and establishing those relationships. And a lot of the venues, they're not wanting to burn a bridge. Nobody's wanting to be the person that's
Yeah.
irresponsible about their safety and preparedness. I think one of the big areas where people are running into is if they're being, unrealistic with their expectations. It's just like we
Mm,
talked about assuming all liability, or can you guarantee this, that, or the other thing. You have to be reasonable and scientific based in your requests and in your approach. So for example, if you were to say, hey, our high traffic areas, I'd like to add an additional cleaning or two during the day. We'd like to add trash pickup an additional time a day, et cetera, et cetera. If you say, I want to staff the bathrooms with an attendant that is cleaning nonstop after every single person, they'll probably do it, but you're going to pay. You're going to pay for that. There is going to
right,
be a limit on the venue about how much they can logistically accommodate.
right.
So having realistic expectations, having those conversations about what could reasonably be expected. One of the things too that we've kind of been working on recently, we're Passover's coming up, as you may or may not be aware, and so we're
Mm-hmm.
dealing specifically with some clients that they do Passover vacations, and we've kind of also
Mm,
built custom packages for them where we're helping them communicate with the hotel from a safety and security standpoint. We're developing emergency operations plans for them. We are providing an attendee specific safety and security plan for the attendees to read, as well as
gotcha.
providing our real-time consultation services, the on-call
Nice.
teleconference of if you were to have an issue pop up, et cetera. So kind of just, it's really approaching that. And honestly, the safety and security preparedness is, even prior to Corona, is something that should be, on your mindset. We focus on AV
Right.
and food and beverage and client experience, and sometimes we just assume that the venue will take care of the safety and security, and it simply is not the case. You have to
Right.
focus on it, or engage someone who can help you focus on that piece.
Exactly. And I'm thinking as you're talking through this of what those that are listening to this, they may say, I don't know if that affects me or not. But if you think about it, it's really any kind of gathering, your local church, or if you're having a wedding, or, a reunion, or anything like
Yeah.
that, where you need to worry about the preparedness of having a safe environment for them, whether it's through hygiene or security.
Yeah.
And that could be somewhere where John's team comes into play and, at least walk you through. It's all of these things of, I always get whenever I talk with someone new who's looking to get help in the event industry, their thing to us is, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And they look, right? They look to us as the experts within our own part of the industry of, what can you tell me of the things that I don't know, that I need to know, and walk me through it so that we can get and have an informed decision to have a better understanding
Hmm.
of what's out there. So hopefully, as we're walking through this today, it's kind of bringing to light to some of those people who are worried. And okay, how is this going to change the live event industry down the road? Well, it is.
Yeah.
In both you and I's opinion, it's definitely going to change the way that we host live events. And again, I don't want people to think that, well, it's just too much of a hassle for me. I'm not going to do live events anymore. I maybe let me just stick to virtual, or try virtual, or do what you and I are doing right now and do a webinar and bring people on. And if and I'm not going to talk you into it or out of it. If that's what's best for you that's listening to this, try for a while. Great, try it. See how successful it is for you, and if it helps bring a profit to your business. But the thing that people don't really realize with a live event is how important a live event is within your community, because it really builds trust, and it gives a perfect opportunity for people to meet one another within their own industry and feel like they're part of something, feel like they're part of a family and part of a tribe and part of a community that cares about them. So if you're in a business that can serve others and can help them through a live event, don't let this deter you. Take this time now, over however long we are going to be, quote unquote, put on hold on having a live event. Take that time to do your research. Reach out to John and his company and find out what are the things and options available to you when it comes time. Because I tell you right now, what's happening with events now, where they're having to be postponed or canceled, they're looking at when they can rebook. And it's going to be at those times where things are going to be piling up and you're going to have unavailability. So it's not just about, I can't host it because I'm not allowed to due to the COVID-19. You're going to be forced to wait because there aren't availabilities for you. So take the time now and plan, strategize, and think about, okay, I want to educate myself as to what are the things that we should be putting into place for the live event when I'm ready to have it so that I can be prepared. And that's what John is here today to kind of walk you through those things so that you know, okay, even if it's just knowledge, right? Taking the knowledge that you're sharing with them right now on the preparedness and then reaching out to you directly to see what plans could be an option for them. And as we wrap up our webinar here in a little bit, you'll talk about those two particular plans that came across my plate and why I reached out to you about a week or two ago and said, oh, these are awesome. You know, this could be helpful for people, not just now, but in the future.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think how I want to wrap this up before I jump into clauses in the hotel contract is, can you share with them what are the typical costs? And I know it really just depends on what kind of program they want to work with you on, but if they are someone, let's say, who just wants to implement something small to start off, what would the typical cost of something of just a preparedness and knowledge of working with you be? And everyone knowing full well that it's just going to be dependent upon what they want to work with you on. But what is it? Is it within a ball, you know, just giving them an idea, in other words, of what it could cost them?
Yeah, so the kind of the two packages that you mentioned earlier. So we have a $499, which is that's that step-by-step how to, you know, implement kind of like a medical contingency plan that literally walks you through a 10-step process of if something were to occur, communication to your attendees, communication to the venue, planning, etc. We also have, excuse me, it's $19.99 of that plan plus real-time live consultation, including pre-conference consultation with the client, with the hotel, and then a 24/7 availability if something were to happen at that time. Our planning services vary depending on the size. For our all hazards emergency operations plans, they vary depending on the size and complexity of your event, and they can be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 depending on the size. A lot of it is really case dependent on what you have an interest in, and a lot of it depends on how much effort has to go into kind of to build that plan. If you're talking your one day 15 to 20 people or 50 people at a we can turn those around and give you kind of a one-page safety and security plan so you're prepared, no problem. And for a couple $100, it's not a big thing. And kind of everywhere in between. And so what we really do is we tell people, hey, let us know, because all our stuff's customized. We also build for clients custom templates. So we build a template customized to them that they can then use for future events, which we found to be nice. Really beneficial. So then you're paying a one-time, right, and then you then update it for every event. And then we included in that, we provide you a webinar that is where we train you kind of how to go through and fill that out. Our on-site stuff completely varies depending on the complexity of the event, how many people you have, etc. We're typically, $1,500 a day for staff, and those are medically certified, trained, equipped. I mean, incident command trained, safety officer trained, etc., etc. And then the size and complexity just varies, and that's 24/7 availability. So it's kind of one of those, if you want the venue security person sitting at the gate looking at credentials, that's not our people necessarily. We can help coordinate those people, but you can get a lot better bang for your buck. Our folks are very specialized, they are there to manage your crisis, whether that's a sprained ankle or a terrorist attack. So I mean, it's kind of everything in between. So that's just kind of a quick snapshot. And I know you'll have more information on the different packages we offer, but that just gives you a ballpark. But what I tell people is, just reach out to me, because we have flexibility in our pricing. We move, we can move a lot of different stuff around and organize it and package it different ways. Our focus is building on the relationship, not just,
Mhm.
grabbing a quick buck here and there. So.
Right. Because at least most of the people that follow me in my events, they do at least one event a year. Some of them do multiple events a year. So having that option of having a template and working and building a relationship with you is fantastic, because it gives
Yeah.
them an opportunity. And then by you building a relationship, just like with me, you can then start suggesting things to them that they may not have thought of, because you'll get a better understanding of what their events are about and what their needs may present to you. And the reason I bring that up is for those of you that's listening and making notes on this, on your future, as you're strategizing and taking the time now to do so, is a lot of these things can help you gain the trust of the attendees that are coming. And once you gain the trust of the attendees that are coming, they're going to want to continue to come, and then they're going to want to refer and bring their people with them, because they know that they are going to be in a safe environment, because you have it under control, you've got their needs in mind, and you are doing your best to put in things into place that can give them a safe environment, not just for them to learn and grow and get great content, but to protect them. So I think that's another good thing for people to think about when they're trying to figure out what are they going to do to kind of curtail how the live event industry is going to change down the road. So thank you for sharing all of that, because that's some really great information. One last question, because this is something that I think a lot of people are struggling with right now, is what can they say to their attendees? Like what is the best way to communicate to them to let them know that you have their best interest at heart? Do you have within your plans things that allow them to understand how to communicate within your templates? Do you provide that information as well?
We do, yeah. In the plans, we actually talk. So depending the step-by-step plan that I told you we were offering has an actual written sample email that your clients can attach and send to their, customizing their voice, but send to their folks. In our emergency operations plans, our full-scale plans, they have that specific, at this time, they have the specific COVID-19 information, but then they also integrated in those plans is a crisis communication plan. So for your listeners today, the biggest thing that I recommend when you're doing, because it was kind of funny, I was going to jump back on this, but you went right there. So
Mm-hmm.
is one of the biggest things we found, that the worst thing that you could do is be dismissive. Is you have to acknowledge that people are concerned, and we run into this a lot with industry professionals, because you're very used to traveling. You don't live, a
Right.
lot in fear. You recognize, hey, sometimes you get your bugs, sometimes this happens. You're used to that. Your clients and your attendees may not always be used to it. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're dismissive, you will kill that trust, kill that relationship, and hurt yourself. So our approach to crisis communications, and we speak and present on this in trainings and whatnot, is, recognize the information, acknowledge the information, and then ensure them that every step is being put into, every reasonable step is being put into place to ensure their safety, health, well-being, and focusing on having a fun event. You want all your crisis
Mm-hmm.
communications to acknowledge the concern, but then be calming in its delivery, that we kind of have hey, we got you. We're there for you. We're going to get you taken care of, right? You do your part, have
Mm-hmm.
fun, learn, engage. We'll take care of making sure everything's put into place to promote that safe and secure environment. We want to bring that calming, yogi sense of mind to just putting people's, minds at ease. So.
True. And I'm glad that both of us were going in that direction with this, because that a couple of weeks ago, when all this started to come to light on the U.S. being impacted with the cases coming across, and what does that mean for live events? And, a lot of my clients were coming to me saying, do we acknowledge it? Do we send out a statement to say, hey, we're aware of it, but we're going to go on as planned. We're just going to monitor it. And we were having calls on a daily basis on what is the best way to approach it. And I said, and my advice to them was, look, it is all based on your relationship with your attendees, with your people,
Yes.
with your client. right? And if you want to maintain that trust and you want to let them know that you care and that, and it doesn't really matter, what you are personally. Like one of my clients, they are a Christian-based company, and they just say, look, they started off their statement of, you are in our thoughts and prayers for those that are affected by this, or family members affected by this. Please let us know. We'll pray for you. And then they jump right into what their statement is on the virus as far as affecting the event. You don't have to do that, but it was their relationship. Their clients are used to that, and it just made it humanize it, right?
Yeah.
We'll let everyone know that we're recognizing, and we can't put our heads in the sand and pretend that this is going to go away. It's in our face. Some of us are being forced to postpone or cancel our events because it's by the government enforcing that. But we want to stay communicating with our list, our attendees, our clients, and let them know, look, we care.
Yeah.
We care about your safety. So I'm glad you brought that up, because again, going back to, I'm not going to worry about doing live events for a while because I can't have one anyway. Well, again, that's the wrong mindset. You need to prepare, because if you have done live events successfully in the past, or at least somewhat enough to where you want to do it again, this is going to eventually die down. And we're going to have an opportunity where we can jump back in and do a live event, and you want to be prepared. So talking through this with John today should give you a lot of information that you didn't know was out there before. I know I didn't until I met you last year at Connect Conference. And, we started our relationship back then, and I thought to myself, well, how could I bring that relationship with my clients now? And it was, because everyone looks at an expense. And that's the point I'm about to make here, is they have a budget that they're trying to maintain. And it's like, where do I want my money to go that's going to be beneficial? Well, unfortunately, with the COVID-19 virus, live events down the road, you're going to have to come up with something within your budget that's going to touch on preparedness. It doesn't have to be extensive where you have a full team there with John's hat saying, I'm here to take care of you. But it has to be something, it has to be something as small as just the plan that you would share with them for them to put into motion, to communicate to everyone, to let them know you have taken action to give them a safe environment, and whatever the appropriate language is, because John is an expert in that and he can work with you on it. So don't dismiss this so suddenly and think that, well, once this is over with, I don't have to worry about it. No, I just don't think that is the case. I think we all know that, once it's happened, and it's going to be something that we have to adjust into our future live events. And he just shared with us, people, that it's not expensive. It's a worthwhile investment for you, for your live events, to do something, so if you are having one now this year that hasn't been canceled or postponed, or you are preparing yourself for when this goes away and you're able to host your next live event, I do ask that you take the time, reach out to John, and just, talk with him and find out what kind of plan he has to offer and what you can put into motion now to prepare you for when that time happens. So I'm going to jump now, and I'm going to cover the next thing that people are asking in regards to hotel contracts. So John, if you could stand by, because we're going to come back to you here in a few moments and talk a little bit more about the two programs specifically regarding COVID-19 and how they can help people out with their events. Okay, people, so I am going to start a PowerPoint. In this PowerPoint that I'm going to be sharing with you right now, we're talking about hotel clauses, what you need to know about the contracts you've already signed or plan to sign in the future, and how the coronavirus pandemic factors into these clauses specifically. And that particular clause that we've all saw in our contracts that we read and signed before, but really just never understood what it was and never thought that, I never have to worry about it, and things like that, is the force majeure clause. Now, the force majeure clause is the clause that most of us, again, are focusing on at this time, where it's like, am I covered? In my event, will this force majeure cover me at this time with the COVID-19 virus? In other words, the acts of God. Does it fall under the act of God clause, where you can put in force the actual force majeure, because right now what's happening, it's really out of your control on whether or not you can have your event. The other is, how can we define the coronavirus pandemic in regards to the force majeure? With how swiftly the virus is spreading, it is very difficult to predict day from day of what's going to happen. I mean, 2 weeks ago, it was just one of those things where we had to keep a watchful eye on, and some people continued to have their events, and some people just went ahead and decided to cancel out their event. Well, if your area, again, I just need to state, I'm not an attorney and I'm not giving you legal advice, but knowing what I know in the event industry, the force majeure clause only comes into play when it has been identified within that area as an act of God. So if you cancel your event and it doesn't fall into play, you will, and most likely, unless you have a great relationship with your venue, have to pay cancellation fees. Force majeure is put into place so that you wouldn't have to pay your cancellation fees. So that's kind of what I'm trying to go through today, is to help you understand a little bit more of what it means. So again, just with the announcement of the World Health Organization a few days ago, when you see this webinar, it was probably, I think, March 10th or 11th when they announced that the coronavirus is now a pandemic, and then we had the president doing his address that night, saying that he was putting restrictions on more travel bans, with Europe excluding the UK. Now that could change. More travel restrictions could come into play. The 30-day travel restrictions that he put into play could be extended. We just don't know what's going to happen. I think, what they're doing right now is to just try to prevent this from getting any worse than what it is. So the force majeure clause broken down looks like this. We're going to break it down into 3 primary components. One is naming the actual disaster, the act of God. And you're going to see here in a moment a clause, a force majeure clause, that I typically am able to negotiate on behalf of my clients, where it really lists out tons of details of what those particular names of disasters can be. As you could see here, this is a very lengthy force majeure clause. Now you'll see in quotes city, and typically it's just whatever that city is. But the biggest thing here for you to see is what's in red. The 4th one that I've described in my force majeure clause for clients is a disease at the hotel or in the city, in that area. And examples back in the day were SARS and Legionnaires' disease. What I've done now with what's going on is for future events and future client contracts for hotels is I'm adding in coronavirus, because there could be down the road a COVID-20, so I just like to have it as detailed as possible. The 5th one they're following is government regulation or advisory, including travel advisory warnings or temporary flight suspensions. So this just kind of gives you a really, really great idea of, if you've got an event planner that can go to bat for you in your contract negotiations with hotels, make sure you really go and have as detailed as you can a force majeure clause in your hotel contract. It is super, super important. And if you don't have one, if the hotel comes back and it's and I've seen this before, where it's a very, very limited contract, it's not very lengthy, you may think to yourself, oh, this is a great contract. Well, what if something happens like right now and you don't have a clause that protects you? You don't have anything to fall on. So just because it's not in there doesn't mean it's a positive. So make sure you have a force majeure clause in there. And if at all possible, have someone on your behalf negotiate the best clause in that force majeure clause possible for you. So going a little bit more into that again, that was not a typical force majeure clause. It's just one that I've negotiated within 15 years of doing event planning. I have been able to learn from my mistakes, costly mistakes that have happened in the years past, where I just continue to add more clauses to my clients' contracts for hotels and venues, tweak them that will prevent them from costing them money at the end of the day. And what I'm going to do right now is show you a typical hotel force majeure clause that you may see. And you could see it takes not even a quarter of the slide right here, where mine took up the full page and I had to make it tiny print. And that says, no damages shall be due to a failure of performance occurring due to acts of God, war, terrorist attack, government regulation, riots, disaster, or strikes, any one of which make performance impossible. Now, you may say, oh, that's good enough. It could be for you, but if you are a group that is putting on an event for the first time, or you have a limited budget and you are doing multiple events throughout the year, this is not specific enough for you, especially in this day and age, because who calls this? If it's not detailed, like the one that I had, who calls the force majeure into play? Unless it has been something that the government in that area may call, then you have rights to it. But I'm going to go back for a minute, and I'm going to go back to this slide, if I can do it here. There we go. And if you jump down here real quickly, I'm going to go down to this. It says, where is it? In addition, should registered attendees cancel reservations or registrations because of reasons over which they have no control, such as, but not limited to, airline flight cancellations, quarantines due to infectious diseases, or other governmentally controlled reasons? Sound familiar? Where they may cause partial performance for the group. The hotel should appropriately reduce, without liability to the group, any obligation by group or the individual which otherwise may be required in any manner under this agreement. Why is that important? Read it again. Appropriately reduce without liability due to other governmental controlled reasons that may cause partial performance to the group. So let's say you contracted with the hotel a program that you were hoping was going to be a few hundred people, say 500 or 600 people. But because of what's happening right now, you only have about 200 people showing up because so many people are restricted of coming in, or they're afraid to fly because they're the elderly and they've been told not to. So because of that I have in my client contracts, we are able to go back to the hotel and say, look, we still want to have the event, but I'm not paying the amount of money that I was going to be paying contractually before because my performance has been reduced. So that's why I wanted to go back to that and let you know the big difference between that clause that I have negotiated for people to what is the typical hotel clause. So it's super, super important for you to understand what force majeure means. Force majeure, again, and again, I'm not an attorney, so if you really want to know legally what it means, seek out the advice of your own attorney. But a force majeure is put into place so that you do not have to pay any penalties if you're to cancel for reasons outside of your control. And that outside of your control is listed within the force majeure clause itself. Another clause type that may be in your contract is also in the same realm of that, and it's just called impossibility, but it covers the same thing. So as you can see here, here's another typical clause that you would see in a hotel contract, but instead of it saying force majeure, they call it impossibility. And it's more because it's all the reasons why it's impossible for you to have the event. It's just another word for it, but it all kind of stays within the same realm of what's happening. Is there things happening outside of your control that's going to cause you to not be able to put your event on? So the force majeure clause broken down again, we covered number one. Number two is the standard of impact. This means you have to prove that this particular event has a certain level of impact on your ability to perform that particular contract. And again, going back to my clause, it talks about that within that same force majeure clause. In other words, is it illegal, impossible, or even commercially impracticable to carry out your contract that you have with the hotel itself? Again, I wanted to keep continuing to stress this throughout this because I don't want anyone coming back to me and say, well, Sherrie gave me legal advice on my contract. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to get you a better understanding, again, of what the force majeure clause means within your own hotel contract. And I'm going to share some information. When I started doing my own research, as I was getting tons of articles the past couple of weeks about force majeure itself and what it means with the coronavirus, I want to share with you the link for that. So Michael Shapiro of the North Star Meetings Group had posted an issue in there March 3rd. Here's a link for your reference for you to go to, really breaking down the force majeure clause and what it means and what you should be thinking about and looking into when it comes time to making a decision for postponing or canceling your events. And in this article, Michael had brought on the attorney Barbara Dunn, Esquire, who's a partner with the Barnes & Thornburn LLP, about examples of how to carry out the contract under these circumstances. And she said, as the attorney, saying illegal would be the hardest to meet, but could come into play at this crisis, meaning that if there are quarantines imposed that would prevent people from meeting in your event location, that technically would fall under illegal. You can't put on an event if that area is under quarantine. She also defined what impossible means, and that would fall under the location of where flights have been temporarily suspended. So if the flight temporary suspensions is affecting your events right now, then you can fall under that category of the force majeure clause. And finally, what does commercially impractical mean? It means that 25% or more of your people aren't able to come to the event. So a lot of these events before this really became a pandemic, they were canceling the big events. And it was because, and I don't know all their true reasons, but if you think about it, it was impractical for them to have it because they were tens of thousands of people coming. They were coming from all over the world. They were different areas where people were traveling in from that would affect the attendance rate. And they just felt it was best for them to cancel because it was impractically impossible for them to have that. So the link to get more information on, if you don't have an attorney yourself to rely upon, I'm not endorsing Barbara Dunn, but I just know that she's an attorney and can help you out. The link that I shared with you in the webinar earlier, and I'll repost it again here soon, there's a link within there where you can reach out to Barbara directly and get some information from her. And the third part of breaking down the force majeure clause is partial performance. Now, this is something that I'm a fan of. And again, it goes back to that other part in the clause that I have within my own clients' contracts is if you elect to have your event anyway, meaning that it's not going to be illegal for you to have it, and you know you can still continue to have it, but not at the larger amount that it was going to be, then you can work with your hotel or your venue to reduce the liability for you and your performance so that it can take your costs down. So instead of having to pay a cancellation fee because you need to make the decision now and say force majeure isn't kind of that factor in your area, talk about reducing your performance. It's because you're not going to be able to have an entire amount of people that you anticipated, and you don't want to have to pay all that out. I pretty much can guarantee they're going to work with you. But this, again, is where your relationships with partners come into play. When John and I were talking earlier about his relationships with people that you can work with, where you want to have some security measures put into place or emergency preparedness put into place, but you yourself don't know who to contact in regards to that. He has relationships, so he's going to reach out to those people in the area and get that taken care of for you because of the relationships that he has and the expert that he is within that. So I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't matter. And in this particular part of events, that having an event planner on your side doesn't matter. During this time, it really does matter to have someone who understands what the force majeure clause means, what reducing performance means. And now that I've kind of given you a little bit more of what the breakdown of it is, you have a little bit more information yourself. So where you can go back and you can read your own hotel clause and understand it a little bit more and have that dialogue with your hotelier to find that out. Again, because we know the language, event planners know the language, they can understand it a little bit better. They know what the hotel is looking for as far as to their lost revenue and how to approach that conversation with them. And because they most likely have an ongoing relationship with that hotelier, they can continue that conversation and say, look, we may have to cancel this. What can you do for us so that you're not losing out and my client's not losing out? So again, that's where someone like myself or someone that you may know that is an event planner that you have a trusted relationship with can do for you. But again, we're not attorneys. If you really want to know legally what is in your right, then I really strongly suggest you reach out to your own attorney or someone like Barbara that is in that link. So the last thing I want to talk about before bringing John back on is insurance coverage. I'm getting a lot of people asking me, is there any insurance that I can put into place now for my future events? And the answer to that is yes. There are so many different types of event insurance that you can look into. There is cancellation insurance, but are you asking, can that cancellation insurance help me at this time? Well, again, I'm not an insurance specialist or an agent, and I have no affiliations to any companies right now about that. But that's kind of like saying, You don't have insurance for your home that could necessarily cover you in a hurricane, but you get a hurricane warning in your area and you call up your agent and say, hey, can I add it? Most likely the answer is going to be no. But again, if you go back to what I said earlier in the webinar, where if you're going to take this time to strategize and prepare for your live event either in the fall or next year, where you really want to put the plans into motion to make sure that you are completely covered, you have things that will not only cover the safety and well-being of your attendees with emergency preparedness and a force majeure clause that will help you in case something like this should happen again, but insurance coverage. So look into all the different event insurance coverages that are out there and see what could be available to you. The other part that I'm learning as I did my own research was I came across another insurance that I never knew existed, and it was communicable disease insurance. It's a new one that I learned. And what that is it covers the unknown. So a communicable disease insurance is about the risk of the unknown. However, when I did a little bit more digging, it doesn't cover, so you can't go out and ask for that now because it will not cover the coronavirus or the COVID-19 because it is known. It's been known since December 2019. So that particular won't cover this, but it could cover down the road. Now, I'm not saying that the coverage right now for communicable diseases is applicable to you or available to you because it is a conversation you will need to have with an insurance agent. Just like when 9/11 happened and we wanted to get terrorist insurance, or when you have a flood in your area or a hurricane in your area for your home or business, and it became very difficult at that point in time to add it or very expensive. So these are things that you're going to need to do the research on your own. What my job today is, and along with John's help, is just to bring you this information that you may not have known was out there. What does it mean? And get a better understanding so that you know what your options are going forward. Just so you kind of understand, what does the hotel expect? Because I get this question all the time, even before this happened. People who hadn't done an event before, clients of mine is putting on a live event for the first time, and they want to know, what kind of insurance coverage should I have? What are hotels expecting? So what I wanted to put on this PowerPoint for you all to see is most hotels ask groups to have liability insurance for up to $1 million. And the extent of that coverage depends on the individual company's own insurance vendor or policy. So you would have to reach out to your own business insurance company and talk with them about it. It could just be something you already have into play. And the certificate of insurance that the hotel would send to you, if they need to see this as a sample of, most of the time they just need you to put them on as part of the people that are covered, because they want to be covered under your insurance during the time of your event. So just kind of talk about that with your own insurance company and see if that's something that you can provide. So you may already have it as a temporary option to cover the travel, the meeting dates, and even if you're going to have an event outside of your country, it could cover that as well. If you happen to not have that as an option to you, don't worry. There are other companies out there that will provide temporary coverage for you over your event dates. There are things out there where I think the last time I had a client get a quote on that, it was just a few $100s. And it really just depends on how much you want. If you want $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, or whatever the case may be, most of the time you need at least $1 million. Then it should only cost you a few $100s. Give or take. I don't know the exact quote because it's all dependent upon you, your event, the number of days, and how much coverage you want. So just make sure you do the research for that. And if you want to learn more about insurance options, if you go to the link again that I had provided, and I'll put it back up here again for you, Michael interviewed Jack Butine. Sorry, Jack, if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly, Butine Exhibition and Event Insurance. And he could probably help you with some of these answers. I'm sure so many insurance companies right now are being very inundated with insurance questions and such, especially, even those in Nashville who got hit by the tornado. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, we have the COVID-19. So I'm sure that they're getting inundated, but they're there to ask and answer any questions for you may have. So just make sure that insurance is an option for you. That's another reason for this call, for you to know what those options are and that it is something that you can apply to your live event. What those options are is dependent upon what your needs are. So reach out to your own insurance agent for your business and ask them those questions. If they don't have the information for you or it's not an option for you, then definitely continue to look into temporary event insurance over your event dates, because that is something out there for you. And just in a few moments, I'm going to bring John back on. We're going to talk about other event preparedness options. And just as I was getting prepared for this webinar today, another article, I'm telling you, these articles are coming out of the woodwork on this right now. And it came from the Event Manager blog on CDC recommendations that can impact your live event before, during, after the COVID-19 outbreak. So this is the link for that. If you want to check it out, eventmanagerblog.com/coronavirus-CDC. And that honestly is a lot of information that I believe John can help you with as well. And I'll bring John back on here, John, where you can talk a little bit more about those two in particular programs that you and I spoke of on what their options are for the COVID-19. Would you like to go in a little bit more detail about that again for them? And I put your website and your email address up there. Is that correct?
That looks correct. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So the two main packages, and remember, we can customize anything else that you'd like to see. But the two main packages that we're offering is our step-by-step guide of moving forward with your live event and implementing coronavirus COVID-19 preparedness steps. And again, that talks about anywhere from communication to the attendees, putting their minds at ease with sample communication techniques and email messaging, as well as coordinating with the venue for response, who's going to be taking the lead to managing people that may present with flu-like symptoms, followed up by the business continuity, crisis communication, reputation management of event continuance, etc. So it's designed to be comprehensive for your use, provide a background, but also a very simple, something that can be implemented quickly and easily for you. In addition to that, we have another package that includes that, as well as live consultation. So that includes pre-conference consultation with your venue or hotel, so us on the line to discuss preparedness steps, as well as real-time consultation for us during your event. So 24/7, you'll have an ECI staff member, crisis management expert available to you and your team should you run into any issue, and not even COVID-19 related, any issue at all that you have crisis management concerns, or I have a patient or a person presenting with flu-like symptoms, how should I handle it? Someone got transported to the hospital, we think that they might have it, what do we do? To we had a stage collapse, or we had someone have a heart attack, or we had someone pass away, what do you recommend? We're available to you for real-time live consultation. So it's a cost-effective way to have access to subject matter expertise without necessarily having to have us on site. And then again, we offer a multitude of different options available to you that we can offer. We can customize any package, any suite of services that you'd like. And again, we're always happy just to, have a phone conversation, just kind of walk you through different options or things you should be considering depending on your location, your agenda, your attendees, and what your interests are. So we're just here to help.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for going into that. And I'm glad you said that it's not just for the COVID-19, it's for really any other on-site emergency that could come into play. And to me, it's soup to nuts on that package number 2, that should be the obvious choice for people, because, it doesn't matter if I have clients come to me all the time and say, Sherrie, can you explain these things to me and get me to understand what I need to know? And because I don't know what I don't know. And we walk them through it and we provide them an outline. But then when it comes down to it, when something comes up, do you yourself want to take the time to read through the guideline, or do you want to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, John, this just happened. What do I do? Because, we are not ourselves event planners or people on site running events. Typically, we are not an emergency preparedness expert, right? We can only tell you what we know. And that is, well, let me contact, in my case, I've had things where people have had an allergic reaction to something, and we immediately call security and we call the hotel. And if the hotel has an on-site concierge, which very rarely do they have that anymore, they will send someone there to help them out, and they'll bring an emergency kit, or if we have an emergency kit, we'll bring that to them. But nowadays, with things of, we don't know what the legal repercussions are going to be down the road with live events. We don't want that to be something that hinders us. We want it to be something that we can let everyone know, we got you covered, and here's how we have you covered. And that's where John and his services come into play. So thank you for sharing that, John.
Absolutely. And we really, just real quick, we really promote taking advantage of leveraging our relationship with the event planner, with the client, to maximize that, and to put clients at ease. Whenever we've run into a lot where people have concerns about a certain area or a certain agenda or certain timing, and say, hey, leverage our relationship. We're bringing this company in to ensure that we're paying attention to your concerns, et cetera. And so we really recognize frankly, the marketing benefit of the partnership as well.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, because as people are, again, taking the time now over the next few months, however long it is that we are kind of in hiatus on live events, and preparing for the one that they're ready to do once this opens back up, whether it's fall of this year, 2020, or 2021, or down the road, this is what you could put into motion. Add it to your marketing. I got a relationship with John and his emergency preparedness crew. We are going to take care of you, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's part of the marketing, because I tell you what, if I were somebody, because I've been, in the live event industry now for over 15 years, and it makes a difference when I feel the promoter cares about my well-being. It's a big difference from something as little as they're going to have coffee and tea there for me, so I don't have to go out of my way to go get something on a break and try to get behind everyone else who wants a cup of coffee at their coffee shop, to making sure that they have a piece of, like, a pad and paper for me to take notes, because I know I was coming to an event, but I forgot to bring one. Those kind of little steps that promoters have put in for years into action to let their attendees know they're taking care of them. But then having now, with what everyone in the entire world, not just the US, but internationally, COVID-19, what do we do? Well, I'm doing an event. I know that I have to be prepared for the unknown, and this is how I'm going to do it. So if you, again, are preparing for these things, this is some great tips that you can add to your marketing to let people know you care. Great, so I'm going to jump really quickly into, again, wrapping up what SLS Event Planning and Consulting is all about. As you know, I am an event planner, so if you're looking for more information to help you with your live event, you can reach out to me about that. Perhaps you understand what your options are that John and I talk through, but you still need an event planner to help you with the next step. So let's say you've done this on your own for so long, and you now have a better understanding of what your options are for your live event that's happening or may or may not happen because of the COVID-19, and you need someone like myself to step in to help you out with the next step, you can certainly reach out to me. Or if you want to get ahead, again, like we keep saying throughout this webinar, for 2021, and start strategizing your live event to create even more potential profit, and to learn how to stay in touch with your clients during this time of the unknown. I mean, going back to what John shared with you and what he has in his plans of the communication and templates on that, on what you're putting into place. Let's take the time now to focus on that. It's just like any other downtime that you have, right? When you're in school and you have spring break, are you going to go out and party, or are you going to take the time to study and be prepared for what's happening next time so you could stay ahead of the game? That's what I would want you to look at right now. Take this time to stay ahead of the game and strategize about what you can do to make up for the lost time or the lost profit that you may have faced right now or will be facing with having to postpone or cancel your live event. How can I make up for this next time around? Take the time to strategize. And the reason, whatever your reason may be, whether you need help for your live events, or you just need someone to help you walk you through your next step, or you want help in strategizing for your next event, I am here to help guide you and get you there. So this is my website, www.slseventplanning.com. You can go there and learn about all of the different event planning services that I have to offer and to schedule a discovery call so that perhaps you can learn what may be best for you. What I want to do right now as I wrap up this call is talk about a special offer. It wouldn't be a student of Bill Glazer without saying these famous words. But wait, there's more. Those of you who know Bill Glazer from the GKIC days, that's one of his famous terms in all of his marketing was, but wait, there's more. I am launching a new program this month, actually. I'm finishing up the touches and it's ready to go live. And it is a customized way for you to create an event strategy playbook that is going to prepare you and launch you into your successful event come 2021 or the fall of this year or down the road. There is no time limit on it. We will spend as much time as needed to work through and customize your very own event strategy playbook that will talk about from A to Z what your event can be about and how you can find the best way to maximize profit with your live event. So if you reach out to me and you mention this emergency response webinar that John and I have been on today, you will also receive a special bonus offer with your customized event strategy playbook. At no additional charge to you, and your investment in my customized event strategy playbook, you will receive one of John's medical contingency plans that is best suited for your event needs. Wouldn't you want to be prepared for the unknown? And that's where I'm going to bring John back on real quickly as we wrap up. And he had mentioned earlier, you know, we've got those 2 plans that he had put into motion for COVID-19, but he also said that there are other options out there. So if once we work together on the customized event strategy playbook and you say to me, Sherrie, maybe not necessarily one of the COVID-19 plans, but maybe something else, that is completely customizable. As John said, we can talk with him together about what is best for your next live event, and whatever you decide is best for you, it will be on me. It'll be, when you're invested in me, will give you that additional preparedness for the unknown for your next live event. Well, thank you so much, John, for your time today. I know there's probably going to be some follow-up questions here that people may have for you or I, and I want to offer the opportunity for them to reach out to us, and they have your website now and your email address as well as me. Again, thank you so much for your time, John. I know people are going to get a lot of valuable information out of this.
It's truly our pleasure. We really are in the business of trying to build relationships and promote, you know, safer, more secure events. I commend you on taking the lead on providing this information to your clients, and I look forward to opportunities to working with you in the future. So thank you for the opportunity.